Last night I couldn't sleep at all, which is fairly normal since I work graveyard shifts and it's pretty much turned me into a night owl. So even on my days off, I'm usually up all night long. So I'm up in bed watching a rom-com, laughing and in a great mood, and decided that I deserve to treat myself to the occasional drink. My bar is in my basement, which is fully finished and furnished. It's pretty much a man cave. I've spent entire nights down there by myself or with the gang, and nothing strange has ever happened. So anything creepy or weird down there was the furthest thing from my mind. I finish laughing my butt off and head down there. I go behind the bar, pour myself a drink, and head upstairs. But as I'm on the second to last step to the first floor, from behind me I hear "Hey!" coming from downstairs in the middle of the basement. It was an older man's voice, in their 50s, I think. I know the house is empty except for me, and it scared me. I looked down there and nothing moved, no one spoke or came forward, and I freaked out. I jutted up the last 2 steps and slammed the basement door closed. I'm wondering, did I imagine that? Is there someone in my house? And as I stand there panicking, I hear the same man's voice coming from down in the basement, but muffled by the door. By the intonation, he asked a question, then continued to talk right after. He was talking to me. The question sounded something like, "Where are you going?" I couldn't make much out, especially what he said after that, but I was panicked, adrenaline pumping, and said, "This is scary, someone broke into my house." I ran into the next room, grabbed my flashlight and my handy-dandy baseball bat, and headed back down there. Silence, just silence. Slowly, I turned on every light in every room down there, ready to defend myself, but nothing. Every nook and corner was checked, and the basement was empty, except for me. I went down to the basement this afternoon, after I woke up, with my trusty bat in hand, and rechecked the whole place. I found nothing. No one. Just me questioning both my sanity and reality. I know what I heard. That guy was pretty loud, and he was talking in my direction and AT me. Even through the door, I heard him talking down there at me up the stairs. It seemed like he was trying to have a conversation with me. I've never had any kind of break-in. This is a very safe neighborhood, or any kind of remotely strange experience down there in my 15 years here. Does stuff like this happen to people out of the blue, or am I finally losing my mind? I don't know what to do now. It happened at 1:50 a.m. At this point, I believe it most likely was paranormal, and I think I'm going to go down there tonight to repeat the same process at the same time and see what happens. My curiosity's gotten the better of me, and I want to know what it has to say. If it's an intruder, I'm coming prepared this time, but it should still be very interesting. I've been down here from 1:45 a.m. until 3 a.m., walking around asking and looking, and nothing. Part of me feels like it needs the darkness, or even just that element of unpredictability to manifest. A couple of years ago, I was home alone. My husband was traveling out of state for work, leaving me to fend for myself in our quiet little house. It was one of those evenings where the wind howled outside, rattling the windows, and the darkness seemed to seep into every corner of the house. I decided to make myself some dinner and settled into the kitchen, the comforting aroma of spices and sizzling food filling the air. To keep myself company, I turned on the news on our Samsung Smart TV, propping the remote on the coffee table before heading back to the kitchen to attend to my cooking. After a few minutes of chopping vegetables and stirring pots, I realized that the sound of the news had vanished. Puzzled, I wiped my hands on a dish towel and walked back into the living room. To my surprise, the TV screen displayed a picture of a couch, but not just any couch, it was the one in our living room. Confusion gripped me as I tried to make sense of what was happening. How could the TV be showing a live video of our living room? I glanced around, searching for any signs of intrusion, but everything seemed undisturbed. The remotes were still lying innocently on the coffee table, untouched. A chill crept down my spine as I realized the gravity of the situation. Someone was watching me through our television. Panic welled up inside me, but I knew I had to act fast. With trembling hands, I reached for a roll of duct tape and covered the camera on the TV, hoping to cut off whoever's prying eyes were invading our home. For the next few days, I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. Every creak of the floorboards and every flicker of the lights sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't help but wonder how long we had been under surveillance before I discovered it. Then, one evening, as I was getting ready for bed, a news report caught my attention. The headline sent a shiver down my spine. Samsung Smart TVs vulnerable to hacking. My heart raced as I listened to the reporter detail the security flaw that allowed hackers to remotely access the cameras on certain models of Samsung Smart TVs. It was as if a cold hand had gripped my heart, squeezing it with fear. I glanced nervously at the TV in the living room, knowing that it had been our portal into the privacy of our home. How many times had someone watched us without our knowledge? The thought sent chills down my spine. From that day on, I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. Every shadow seemed to hold a lurking presence. Every sound echoed with suspicion. I became hyper-vigilant, checking every corner of the house for signs of intrusion. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that had settled over our home. It was as if a dark cloud hung over us, casting a shadow over our once peaceful existence. Then one night, as I lay in bed, I heard a faint scratching sound coming from somewhere in the house. My heart skipped a beat as I strained my ears, listening intently for any sign of movement. The scratching grew louder, more insistent until it seemed to fill the entire house. Panic seized me as I realized that whatever was making that sound was getting closer, inching its way toward me with each passing moment. With trembling hands, I reached for the phone on the bedside table, ready to call for help. But before I could dial a number, the scratching stopped abruptly, leaving behind an eerie silence that seemed to echo through the darkness. I lay frozen in bed, my heart pounding in my chest as I waited for anything to happen. But the house remained still, as if holding its breath, waiting for whatever was out there to make its next move. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the scratching started again. Only this time, it wasn't coming from outside the house. It was coming from the living room, from the very same TV that had been our unwitting gateway into the world of surveillance. With a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, I realized that the source of the scratching was not some unknown intruder, but something far more sinister. Something that had been lurking in the shadows of our own home all along. As the scratching grew louder and more frantic, I knew that whatever was on the other side of that TV was not human. It was something dark, something malevolent, something that had been waiting for the perfect moment to reveal itself. And as I lay there, paralyzed with fear, I knew that our nightmare was far from over. For in the darkness of the night, with no one to hear our cries for help, we were at the mercy of whatever lurked on the other side of that TV screen. It was a scary night. My parents had left earlier for a dinner party, leaving me home alone. Normally, I didn't mind being by myself, but tonight was different. Tonight, something felt off. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the glowing numbers on my alarm clock. It was past midnight, and the darkness outside seemed to seep into every corner of the house. I wrapped myself tighter in my blanket, trying to shake off the unease creeping up my spine. Suddenly I heard it, a faint whisper, barely audible over the howling wind. My name, Tom, it called, drifting up from downstairs. My heart skipped a beat, and I froze in terror. Who could be calling my name at this hour? My parents wouldn't be back for hours, and I didn't have any friends nearby. I strained my ears, listening intently for any other sounds. The house was eerily silent, except for the occasional creaks and groans of its aging structure. I hesitated, debating whether to investigate or stay put in the safety of my room. Curiosity and fear warred within me, but ultimately, curiosity won out. I had to know who or what was calling my name. With trembling hands, I slipped out of bed and tiptoed to my bedroom door. Peering into the dimly lit hallway, I took a deep breath and summoned all the courage I could muster. Slowly, I descended the stairs, each step echoing loudly in the silent house. The air grew colder with every step, sending shivers down my spine. As I reached the bottom of the staircase, the whisper came again, louder this time. "Tom," it called, sounding closer now, as if it was right around the corner. I swallowed hard, my throat dry with fear. Steeling myself, I rounded the corner and entered the living room. The room was bathed in darkness, illuminated only by the pale moonlight filtering through the curtains. I squinted into the shadows, searching for any sign of movement. That's when I saw it, a figure standing by the window, its silhouette stark against the moonlit backdrop. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached cautiously, my footsteps barely making a sound on the carpeted floor. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure didn't respond, but I could feel its gaze boring into me, cold and unrelenting. With a trembling hand, I reached for the light switch, flicking it on in one swift motion. The room flooded with light, illuminating the figure before me. It was nothing, just a coat rack draped with my parents' coats, swaying gently in the breeze. I let out a shaky sigh of relief, feeling foolish for letting my imagination run wild. But then I heard it again, the whisper closer now, right behind me. "Tom," it hissed, sending chills down my spine. I whirled around, but there was nobody there, just space and the faint sound of the wind outside. Panic seized me then, and I bolted for the front door, desperate to escape whatever unseen presence haunted our house. But as I reached for the doorknob, a cold hand gripped my shoulder, sending shockwaves of terror through my body. I spun around to face my attacker, but there was nobody there. Just an empty hallway, stretching out before me like a corridor of nightmares. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet as I tried to flee. That's when I heard it, a low, guttural growl emanating from the darkness. It was a sound unlike anything I'd ever heard before, primal and full of menace. I scrambled to my feet, my heart racing as I backed away from the unseen threat. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the growling stopped. The house fell silent once more, the only sound the pounding of my own heart in my ears. I stood there, frozen in terror, unsure of what to do next. But then I remembered, the phone. I had to call for help. With trembling hands, I fumbled for my cell phone, dialing my parents' number with shaking fingers. But as the phone rang on the other end, I realized something chilling. the voice that answered was not my mother's or father's. It was the voice from downstairs, the one that had been calling my name all along. "Tom," it whispered, sending a shiver down my spine. "You shouldn't have come looking for me, Tom. Now you're mine." And with that, the line went dead, leaving me alone in the darkness with whatever unseen horror lurked in the shadows. I sank to my knees, tears streaming down my face as I realized the truth. I was not alone in the house, and whatever was with me, it was hungry for more than just my name.